What happens when a former child star exposes one of hip-hop's biggest secrets? Orlando Brown just dropped bombshell audio recordings allegedly featuring Meek Mill and Diddy, and the internet is absolutely losing its mind. But here's what nobody's talking about. Orlando claims Meek Mill physically confronted him right after the leak. And trust me, what Orlando revealed about other young rappers in those same circles, it's about to shake the entire industry to its core. You need to hear this from the beginning, because this story connects dots that people have been ignoring for years. Let me take you back to where this whole situation exploded. For years, and I mean years, there have been whispers, rumors, and blind items about what really goes down at industry parties. Specifically, Diddy's infamous gatherings that insiders have quietly talked about since the early 2000s. But everything changed when an audio recording surfaced online that allegedly captured something deeply disturbing. Here's what we know about this audio. According to multiple sources, someone at one of these exclusive parties recorded what they heard coming from a private room. The person who allegedly made this recording claims they witnessed Diddy and Meek Mill leave the main party area together and head into a secluded space. Driven by suspicion, or maybe just curiosity, this individual followed them and positioned themselves close enough to record what was happening behind closed doors. When this audio hit the internet, it spread like wildfire. People described the recording as painful to listen to, with sounds that suggested something non-consensual or extremely uncomfortable was taking place. The voices were allegedly identified as Diddy and Meek Mill, though neither has confirmed the authenticity of the recording. But here's where it gets even more complex. This wasn't just a random leak. This audio allegedly came from what insiders call a freak-off party, one of Diddy's notorious private gatherings that have been the subject of industry gossip for decades. Now, you might be wondering, how does Orlando Brown fit into all of this? Well, Orlando didn't just share this audio. He came forward claiming he had multiple recordings, and that Meek Mill's situation with Diddy was just the tip of the iceberg. Orlando alleged that these recordings also featured other young rappers who had been romantically linked to industry executives, either through rumors or through their own subtle admissions in interviews and lyrics. And this is where the title of our video becomes crucial. Meek Mill allegedly jumped Orlando Brown after these leaks went public. But we'll get to that confrontation in a minute, because first, you need to understand the full context of what Orlando exposed and why it triggered such an aggressive response. Before we dive deeper into Orlando's claims, we need to talk about the legal bomb that made all of these allegations mainstream. In early 2024, music producer Lil Rod filed a lawsuit against Diddy that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. This wasn't just another celebrity lawsuit. This was a detailed legal document that named names, described situations, and made allegations that people had only whispered about in private. Meek Mill's name appeared in this lawsuit, though not always directly. The legal filing alleged that Diddy had bragged about sleeping with various artists in exchange for career advancement. While Meek wasn't explicitly named in every section, the descriptions and context clues led internet detectives to believe he was one of the artists being referenced. Usher was also mentioned in the lawsuit, though notably, Usher chose not to respond publicly to these allegations at all. The lawsuit described a pattern of behavior where young, aspiring artists were allegedly exploited at parties and private gatherings. It painted a picture of an industry where advancement came with strings attached, strings that involved compromising situations and activities that would shock the general public. The allegations included claims of sexual assault, coercion, and the creation of an environment where consent was questionable at best. When this lawsuit became public, Meek Mill was understandably frustrated. He took to social media to express his anger about being associated with these allegations. Meek emphasized his street background and reputation, making it clear that no one would dare approach him with drugs or same-sex propositions because of who he is and where he comes from. He suggested that the media was forcing a narrative about him that simply wasn't true. Meek posted about waking up to see his name trending online, not for his music or his activism, but because of these salacious allegations. He called out bloggers and media outlets for spreading what he considered to be lies and distortions. But here's the thing, despite his denials, more alleged evidence kept surfacing. Now, if it was just one lawsuit and some rumors, maybe the story would have died down, but that's not what happened. Instead, the internet went into full detective mode, and people started digging up old videos, tweets, and social media activity that seemed to support the allegations. First, there was the infamous pool video that resurfaced. This old footage showed Meek Mill in a pool, appearing visibly uncomfortable. Some viewers claimed he looked like he was trying to relieve some kind of pain. The person recording the video? Allegedly, Diddy himself. At the end of the clip, Diddy's voice can be heard thanking Meek for putting in that work. To most people, that phrase might sound innocent, but given the context of the allegations, viewers began speculating that it was coded language for something much more explicit. Then people discovered Meek's Twitter activity. Screenshots circulated showing that Meek had allegedly followed an adult-themed account that focused on explicit content involving men. Now, following an account doesn't prove anything on its own, but in the court of public opinion, it added fuel to an already raging fire. Even more damning was when internet sleuths uncovered old lyrics from Meek's songs. One particular track allegedly contained lines that hinted at intimate acts with Diddy, though the lyrics were ambiguous enough that they could be interpreted in different ways. But when you combine these lyrics with everything else that was surfacing, people started to believe there was a pattern. This is the exact moment when Orlando Brown entered the conversation in a major way. Orlando had been making claims about industry executives for years, but people dismissed him as unstable or attention-seeking. However, once the Lil Rod lawsuit came out and all this additional evidence started piling up, Orlando's previous statements began to look a lot more credible. And that's when Orlando allegedly released those audio recordings, the ones that would eventually lead to his confrontation with Meek Mill. To understand why Orlando Brown became the person to expose all of this, you need to know his story. And I'm warning you right now, this gets heavy. Orlando Brown was once one of the most promising young actors in Hollywood. During the early 2000s, industry insiders genuinely believed he was going to be a massive star. His career peaked during That's So Raven, where he played Eddie Thomas and became a household name among young viewers. He had charisma, talent, and the kind of energy that suggested a long, successful career ahead. But then, almost immediately after That's So Raven ended, everything fell apart. In Houston, Orlando was arrested for possession, marking the beginning of what would become a devastating pattern of legal troubles. By 2011, he was jailed for 27 days for failing to complete a court-ordered alcohol education program. A disturbing audio recording leaked of Orlando making violent threats, which convinced many people that he had simply lost his mind. He entered rehab in 2016, showing glimpses of hope that he might turn his life around. But by 2018, he relapsed and was arrested again for narcotics possession. The public narrative was simple. Orlando Brown was a former child star who had succumbed to substance abuse and mental health issues, another tragic Hollywood story. But Orlando kept saying the same thing over and over again. His behavior wasn't just about drugs. He claimed there was a deeper reason for his downward spiral, and that reason was connected to what happened to him in the industry. Orlando went even further, claiming that he wasn't surprised by the Meek rumors Because, in his words, Meek had allegedly been gay for a long time. Orlando believed Meek's actions were consensual rather than forced, which actually made the situation more complicated. He rejected the narrative that Meek did these things purely for career advancement, suggesting instead that there was genuine attraction or willingness involved. Orlando also dropped another bomb. He accused Rick Ross of being involved in similar behavior, suggesting that Meek's connection to Ross wasn't just professional, but potentially romantic as well. These allegations created an even bigger storm because they implicated some of hip-hop's most respected figures. Now, Orlando Brown wasn't the only person speaking out about abuse at industry parties. There's another voice in this conversation that demands attention: Allie Carter. Allie has been sharing her story publicly for years. Though, like Orlando, she was often dismissed as unreliable or attention-seeking. Allie's account becomes especially significant regarding Meek Mill because she was reportedly scheduled to provide testimony in Diddy's legal case. However, she maintains she was prevented from testifying. She disappeared before her court date, claiming she was being followed. She documented incidents including a break-in at her residence, and later stated authorities placed her under protective custody. Allie voiced frustration about not being taken seriously by officials, suggesting industry influence over law enforcement. She felt unfairly criticized by the public despite her intentions to expose wrongdoing. In her legal statement, Allie identified several individuals as alleged participants, including Birdman, Denzel Washington, and Young Jock. Birdman and Young Jock are noteworthy here due to long-standing speculation about their personal lives in hip-hop. Young Jock, who emerged in the mid-2000s, has faced ongoing questions. Birdman has been subject to rumors concerning his relationships with Lil Wayne and other young artists under his guidance. Multiple accounts suggest Meek Mill located Orlando Brown and physically confronted him. While precise details remain unclear, neither has provided a complete account. Sources indicate Meek attacked Orlando, possibly with others present. The question many ask: why such a violent reaction if the allegations lack truth? Some argue Meek's aggressive response actually validates Orlando's claims that someone innocent wouldn't resort to physical violence. Others suggest Meek was simply protecting his reputation against what he views as damaging falsehoods that could ruin his career. What's confirmed is that after this alleged encounter, Orlando became more vocal. Rather than being silenced through intimidation, Orlando intensified his claims. He appeared in interviews appearing injured, displaying what seemed like bruises, and maintained that everything he'd stated about Meek, Diddy, and other young rappers was accurate. Orlando also indicated the audio he released wasn't his complete evidence. He claimed possession of additional recordings and testimony that would reveal the full extent of what he alleged was occurring in the industry. This threat of further evidence may have triggered the confrontation with Meek initially. Here's the connection. Orlando's allegations about Meek Mill weren't standalone. They were part of a broader pattern he claimed to have observed involving multiple young rappers. When Orlando mentioned names like Drake, Bow Wow, and others alongside Meek Mill, he was implying this was a systemic industry pattern, not isolated events. The young rappers Orlando referenced share commonalities. They rose during an era when guidance from established figures like Diddy, Birdman, and others was essential for success. Drake had connections to Birdman through Young Money. Bow Wow developed under Jermaine Dupri and Snoop Dogg's mentorship. These relationships, Orlando suggested, sometimes involved expectations extending beyond musical collaboration. As if Meek Mill's situation wasn't challenging enough, 50 Cent joined in his characteristic manner. Through persistent social media mockery, 50 Cent publicly criticized Meek's recent album performance, echoed rumors rumors about Meek being someone's companion and suggested Meek shouldn't be vacationing while facing these allegations. 50 shared an older video of Meek performing for Diddy and added commentary mocking him as a devoted partner, using sarcastic phrasing to ridicule him. Meek attempted responding by disputing 50's claims about his sales figures and explaining his recent collaboration with Rick Ross. He criticized 50's credibility, but notably didn't directly address the companion allegations. This avoidance only increased speculation. 50 Cent's participation actually served beyond entertainment. It maintained public attention on the story. Each post from 50 generated massive engagement and reminded audiences about the allegations. Intentionally or not, 50 became instrumental in maintaining pressure on Meek to provide fuller responses. Share your perspectives in the comments section. If you want more content examining the Diddy situation and surrounding allegations, subscribe because this story continues developing. The truth eventually emerges. The question is whether we're prepared to acknowledge it.